We're going to start by looking at this tri-strike here. What's going to happen is we're going to pop tri-strike, we're going to use it, and then everyone's going to die and we're going to lose mid. And I want you to think about why this tri-strike doesn't end up being particularly effective in this situation. Give you one more look at that, this time from the overhead view. All right. So this is a really common kind of tri-strike that I see from players who are newer to weapons that have tri-strike. You know, this is a player on my team who has not played a lot of vanilla slosher. We've typically been putting them on different weapons, and this was a learning experience for them. You know, this is something that they're not used to playing, and they're still figuring out their positioning and everything. And I think tri-strike is also not a part of their typical repertoire, so they're still trying to figure it out, and this is really common to see of someone who's still trying to figure out tri-strike. A couple of things stand out here to me as reasons why it didn't work. One is that when we start the clip again, we'll see that there's not really any pressure on the enemy team except for the tri-strike. So if we look over here, I'm over there on the left-hand side, I go down, and then we have a moment. We've got a player to our back left who on the reflux, and then we've got a charger. So they're not going to be pushing in. They're not going to be causing all that much of a mess on this left-hand side where the enemies are hunkering down. So this tri-strike, you can see there aren't any teammates who are going to be pushing that area while this goes out. There aren't any bombs being thrown at it. Aren't any other specials going out. There's not a lot of follow-up on this. And that's a little bit of a problem because a tri-strike is a displacement special. Its job is not to get picks. It's probably not going to do that a lot of the time unless there's a whole bunch of other stuff being thrown at people and the alternative for them is getting hit by something else. That's when the tri-strike gets picks. But right now, there's nothing else moving these players out of the way. So without any follow-up here, this one's probably just going to make people move a little bit, and otherwise it's not really going to help too much. Another thing about this tri-strike is that it moves from left to right in a straight line, and they're spread out enough that the three tri-strikes are not going to create the pressure that they need to be impactful with each other. You can't use one tri-strike to create the pressure for the second strike to catch someone or to force them to move again. Because they're spread out just enough that there are going to be gaps in between them, or the opponent can just kind of like back up or move forward a little bit and they're out of the radius. Whereas if you cluster them a little bit closer together, there's a lot less room to breathe and it can become a lot harder to avoid them. Finally, and this is one of the first points I'm going to be talking about, this tri-strike doesn't protect the user at all. You can see this especially well, really from both angles, but you look at this from the overhead view, and you'll see that there's kind of this arc that the tri-strikes create, and even by the time the first one goes out, the opponents have now crossed that arc and are closing distance, and the strikes are not in their way at all. And so that means that they just kind of get free access to our team on the zone, and they're able to move up. So let's talk about how to use tri-strike differently so that we can get better results and, you know, maybe get some picks, but definitely be able to at least create something that our teammates can follow up on. So the first thing I want to say about tri-strike is that you want to think about it like a really good bomb. Like each strike is a really, really good bomb. You know, it's better than your typical splat bomb right there, because it nukes this huge area here and it has a lot further of a throw distance. It sticks to things, which is super nice. That's something about suction bombs that lets them be a lot more impactful. And it does a lot more damage overall if you stay inside that radius. It is a bit delayed, and so that's one disadvantage. They're not just insta-splatted once it lands on them, but it's still a much better version of a bomb overall. And if a strike is a bomb, then a tri-strike is kind of a really short bomb rush. Anyone who's played Splatoon 2, you will have a little bit of a leg up understanding this if you've played a weapon with suction bomb rush, like the Neo Splash. In fact, if you haven't, I recommend going out and finding a video of some, like, top, 3000 X power player who plays the Neo Splash and watching how they use their bomb rushes. Because there's a pattern that you'll notice with the very, very top level ones. They tend to be good enough at positioning that no one's going to surprise them, and so they can kind of just throw the bombs at max range and then move the bombs around. But you'll notice that they're never throwing a bomb in the same place twice in a row, and specifically that they tend to do a lot of up-down. So they'll throw one bomb a little further forward, then one bomb a little back. And so they'll kind of go back and forth with them. And there's a reason for that. You want to stagger them so that a player needs to continuously be responding to them. If you put one here, and then one here, if there's a player right here, the first one is going to force them forward. And then when the second one lands, if they just go backward, the third one is nowhere near them. Whereas if you put one here, and then one back here, this is something that can actually force this person to either move very far back or push further forward than they really want to. Because if they like this position and maybe want to get a little bit further ahead and like this is about the range that they feel comfortable, then what could happen is if you do the three spread out in a line like this, they get to just kind of stay in their happy place right here and not get forced out behind cover. If there's a piece of cover that's about, this wide that they're trying to work behind, they can stay behind it if you put all three in a line. But if you go one here, okay, that's fine, I'll paint my way out and land here. One here, and they back up, and there's another one here right now. First of all, they haven't completely painted this area back over when the first one went off, and so they're a lot more likely to have their movement impeded. Secondly, this all has just gotten painted by the bomb that went over here, so now they're forced to either move really far back, and now you've moved them out of the way, or they're forced to move really far forward, which is significantly more dangerous for them, and they're probably going to get shot for that if there's any follow-up to this. So instead of spreading them all out in a row, it's better to go forward and back a little bit. And while you don't get to do too much of that with the tri-strikes, it is very, very useful to do so, and I highly recommend considering always putting your second strike a little bit closer to you, or at least in a different line than you're putting the others. That is especially important if you're being rushed by something. When you pop tri-strike, you can't necessarily ensure that someone is going to move in a certain direction that when you throw the tri-strike at them. Occasionally you can. Occasionally you can make it so that it's, much more incentivized for them to move in a certain direction. Like, this player right here who got splatted, all they had to do was take one step over here and they were in non-lethal range. Whereas if they wanted to go the other way, they would have had to swim all the way over to here. So this is much more likely to encourage them to move this way than it is to encourage them to move this way. It's not impossible that they move forward, but it's going to encourage them to do that. But because the radius is so small, and especially because a tri-strike doesn't do all of its damage at once, and the fuse time's slow enough, more so than with like a splat bomb, you're more likely with a tri-strike to be able to actually like move through it in the direction that you want to. So you may not necessarily be able to zone them away in the way that you can with a Booyah Bomb. You put a Booyah Bomb on this player, there is generally just one direction that they're able to get away from that Booyah Bomb in. Unless you put it dead center on top of them, they're definitely going to go in the direction that takes them as far away from the radius as quickly as they can. So something you have to keep in mind with the tri-strike is that you can't be sure when you throw a strike directly at a player that they're not just going to run forward at you. And so one thing you can do is just play preemptively, and you can put one in front of them like this so that they just can't advance into it. But if you do end up throwing one more close to a player, maybe because you didn't see them, or maybe because it's just a really important space that you don't want them to be able to take, and maybe like they're up on a ledge here and you need the radius to cover as much of that ledge as you can, you have to be aware of the fact that you might actually be forcing them to move toward you. Displacement specials, they displace the opponent, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're displacing them in the direction you want them to be displaced. They might just run at you from what you do. And if that happens, that's when throwing the second one like right down at your feet is actually a really good idea. It's really common actually with like a splattershot player, let's say, to just throw a suction bomb directly at their feet. That seems really counterproductive. Like, why would you do that? Because like you can paint whatever is nearby you. If someone's getting that close to you, why aren't you just shooting them? Well, they're not getting that close to you yet. It's if they get that close to you later. Because what you do with that kind of bomb is you put it at your feet if you're getting rushed and you're getting scared by something, so that you buy yourself some time. Because by the time it's exploding, look how far away I am from it. That player who's trying to chase me, they can chase me up until this point, and then as long as I put the bomb in the right place and I've positioned myself carefully and thrown this with the right timing, they don't have time to get from here all the way over to here. And even if they get over to here, they're probably taking some indirect damage, and so that's still not really preferable. And so they can't rush through the bomb before it explodes, which means while I'm swimming away and doing all of that retreating I just showed you, they're stuck standing hereabouts waiting for the bomb to explode. And all of that time between when they have to stop and wait and when the bomb explodes is free time for you to be creating more distance and getting further away. That's a really common tactic with suction bombs, and again, we're thinking of strikes like a really, really good suction bomb. So that's an option that you have. If you throw a strike at someone and now it's like, oops, they're getting way too close to me, just put one right there. And then that should give you enough time to back away a little bit. Or, if you're not planning on backing away, what you could do is one at them, one at your feet, and now just think about what space it is that they occupy right now. If after the first one they started to run at you, but then they had to stop, well, now their escape route is painted, their route toward you is painted. If you put a strike right here, that's threatening them pretty badly. And now that's your third strike down. And so, given that they have very limited movement for where they can go next, this should give you some pretty good shots if they don't go down to the strike itself. So, forward, down, middle is another pretty good combination that you can use to keep yourself safe if you're being rushed while you're trying to use them. Couple of miscellaneous points here. First of all, when you are using a tri-strike weapon, you often have a bomb. Some of the most popular ones are the Vanilla Slosher and the T-Tech, both of which have a splat bomb that they can throw in addition to this. So you should never, on any of those weapons, really only be getting a tri-strike. Remember that when you pop special, you get an ink tank refill. So the first bomb that you throw before you pop special is absolutely free of charge. This suction bomb right here takes 70% of my ink tank, and I don't care, it's refilled. Because I used my special. So, just always, like with almost every weapon, just throw a sub-weapon out there before you use your special, unless there's some reason that you need to be more stealthy than that. And a lot of the time, you probably don't. With the tri-strike, given that this is a bomb rush, that just gives you another bomb in your rush. You don't really have a tri-strike with those weapons, you have a quad strike. And that's if you don't go all out and throw another bomb after the strike is done. Because none of the strikes take any ink to fire. And you've just refilled your ink tank. So what you could be doing is bomb, tri-strike, 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 bomb. And look at that whole area that I was able to cover. There was a big gap in between these 3 strikes right here in the middle. But I covered both of those gaps with my bombs, and so now there's very little room here that wasn't attacked by what I just did. And notice how I threw them in a bunch of seemingly random directions so that it was unclear exactly what the pattern was going to be. There was a bomb here, and then a strike here, and then a strike here, and then a strike here, and then a bomb here. It's kind of random all over the place, and that makes it less predictable, and it makes it less clear to the opponent what it is they need to do next in order to get away. And it also makes it more difficult for them to strategize a way that they can stay behind a piece of cover and not get flushed out. They have to constantly be reacting to which direction it is they have to go next, even if that's not a direction they really want to go at all. Now, instead of staggering them like this, there is situationally utility in actually having them land all at the same time. And that way it's kind of like one really big bomb that can just nuke an area for you. The way that you do that is by controlling when they land. Because as with normal bombs, the fuse time doesn't start until they hit the ground. So manipulating when they hit the ground is going to let you manipulate when it is they blow up. So the way to get all of them to land at once is you aim the first one highest, because that one will have the most hang time. It'll take the longest to reach the ground. And then the second one less high, and then the first one you're throwing like directly at the floor so that it explodes as quickly as it can. One high, one mid, one low. A really cheap, easy way to get this at first and figure out the timing is to just try and create a diagonal line from here to here to here. So a little bit off on that one. The first one took a little bit too long, but the second two were pretty well synced up. So you can learn by just doing it in a diagonal line like that, but in an actual match, you don't want to get too married to the idea of having specifically a diagonal line, because there are other things that you can do with this. So if I go one high, one mid, one low in a line like that, then sure, they all go off at once, and they cover that whole area. But what if I want them to be going to different places? Or what if I want to be spreading them out in the way that I was showing before, so that people are reacting to one and running into the other? So then you could go one high, one mid, one low. Oh, well, that wasn't supposed to hit up there. And you can get any, variety of different combinations. You could, do them in more than a one-dimensional way, forward and back, like we've talked about. So I wouldn't get too married to the diagonal idea. I would instead be thinking high, mid, low, and figuring out, what that timing actually is by messing around with it, maybe in the training room or in some games, to get the hang of that. One time that you definitely don't want to do this is if you're playing tower control and it's the end of the game. It's a really common strategy in tower control to have a weapon with strikes to just play really safe when you've got lead with the last 20 seconds or so, because then all you need to do is pop strikes, put one on the tower, and then another one on the tower, and then another one on the tower, with maybe 5 seconds left to go in the game. And at that point, there is no way that the enemy team is going to be able to stay on the tower and stay alive for the duration of the rest of the game to trigger the overtime. You're just really, really forcing them off the tower. It's going to be hard for them to even stay on and keep it from starting to return to mid, because that's a 5-second timer, and you have longer than that with your strikes. So even if you don't have someone to get up on the tower, you may actually still win the game by yourself just by using that. But definitely, if you have someone to get up on the tower while that's going out, they're going to be smoke screened, because the wall of ink coming up from the ground is going to make it difficult to see them. And they're going to have this just massive hitbox attacking any enemy player who's trying to also be on that spot. So they should have the advantage in just getting their feet down on the tower and ending the game then and there. Something that I did just mention is the fact that it's smoke screens. Something that we've seen before is players using the tri-strikes and the fact that it obscures your vision so thoroughly in that column to sneak frontline weapons in. So you'll have like maybe a carbon roller or something sharking right about here, right at the edge, and then the strike goes out, and now it can just safely move in here and take all of this space without anybody seeing it and without it having to fire any shots to paint for itself. So this is really stealthy, and this lets it just take a ton of space for free, pretty much undetected all the way through. And that can be a really powerful way to get it close enough to just delete someone and start moving through the enemy team like that. Finally, something that I think I've talked about on the channel before, but that I want to mention in the Trizooka guide here, is that walls are really, really tricky with Trizooka. Because this doesn't work the same way that a Booyah Bomb does. A Booyah Bomb, if you throw this at, the bottom of this wall right here, the radius isn't going to go very far up and through the floor here. It will go somewhere, but they can kind of just walk back, and they only have to leave maybe a radius the size of a bomb or something. But with the Tri-Strike, it's a cylinder. And so you put the strike right there, and you can see, like, it goes the full distance back to here. And from this angle, you can't see the strike. The strike hits the wall underneath. So unless they listened to the audio cue, or unless they see the gray dotted lines, which can be, a pretty giveaway warning sign, but are also pretty easy to miss, and sometimes people see them but can't quite judge where the center of the circle is in time, they might just get hit up through the floor by something that they didn't see coming. And so throwing them at walls isn't necessarily a bad thing, especially if you're like right up against this wall and there's like a charger player or something up above that you can't contest directly with your main weapon, but that you can get to move out of the way with the strikes, and then maybe you catch them like this. So hopefully that was a lot for you to think about with how to use this special so that you can use it a lot less randomly and get a lot more value out of it, even in a solo queue context when you can't coordinate. Make sure that you're keeping yourself safe with it, and make sure that you're using it in a way that's actually going to force them to move around as much as you possibly can, create as much of a disturbance as possible to get them out of those key positions that you don't want them in, and set up as many traps as you possibly can for your team to spring for you, or even for them to spring by, failing to paint their feet in one crucial moment, or running backwards into something that they didn't see.